Hello and welcome to Englishin. I'm janerupp. In this video, we're going to talk about imitating and the listen and repeat approach to learning American English pronunciation. We're going to talk about the pros and the cons, and we're also going to talk about using this approach on your own and using this approach with a coach. Now, whether you think that you are good at imitating sounds or not, I can pretty much guarantee that everybody watching this has tried to use this as a strategy to learn pronunciation of a language. So listening to what you hear, copying what you hear, listening to what you hear, copying what you hear. Some people feel that they are really good at it and that they've made a lot of progress this way in learning American English pronunciation. Now, other people feel like they listen and repeat and listen and repeat and try and don't really get anywhere in terms of improving their pronunciation skills. People still have a lot of trouble understanding them. They still struggle with certain words. Now, if you're one of the people who doesn't think that you're great at imitation, I've got great news for you. There are other strategies that can be even more effective than simply imitating what you hear. We're going to talk about those in a little bit. If you're one of those people who thinks that you're great at imitating sounds, let's talk a little bit more about your strategy and some potential pitfalls. Now, if you do really well at imitating other people, if you feel that you can hear a lot of those differences and repeat them, this can be a really good strategy for learning American English pronunciation on your own for really cheap. So if you're really good at imitating, you can make a lot of progress on your own without hiring a coach. Now, we do see a couple of problems with this approach, even if you are really good at imitation. One of the problems is that at some point, you may reach a plateau. So you may reach a point at which you don't really feel like you're making more progress, or you feel that the rate of your progress is not as high as it was before. What happens is that some of the sound differences between American English and your native language, they may seem really big. So those differences may seem like really big differences, and you can hear them and you can try to imitate them. The problem is that even with those big differences, those things that you do hear, that you do notice, you may think that you are imitating the target sound perfectly. But in reality, you may be close, but not quite all the way to that target sound, the way that it's produced by native speakers. If you miss the target by a little bit, it doesn't really matter too much if people understand you easily. So that's the real key. Do people understand you easily when you speak American English, or are you still struggling a little bit with this? Do you feel that it's more work to speak American English than it is to speak in your native language? Do you feel that people misunderstand you or don't necessarily catch all of what you're saying, or have to put in a lot more work to understand what you're saying? Now, if those things are the case, then you might want to work on that last 20-25% to get to the target. Along those same lines, there are a lot of other sound differences that you may not be aware of at all, that you may not even notice. So some of the bigger, more dramatic sound differences, you may notice those, but there may be other really important sound differences between the sounds in your native language that you produce and the sounds of American English that you don't even realize are there. So that's where it can be helpful to have somebody to give you feedback. Now, you can try to get some of this feedback from native speakers, maybe from friends or family members or coworkers who speak American English as their native language. It can sometimes be difficult to get the really detailed information you need, though, to improve or to figure out which sounds you're really having trouble with. People who are not really trained to hear and recognize and identify differences may not be able to tell you specifically exactly what's going wrong. But again, for free, if you have people who can help you for free, this is a great place to start. Now, let's talk about what happens if you decide to hire a coach. So maybe you've been working on listening and repeating on your own for a while, you've hit a bit of a plateau, or maybe you're one of those people who never felt that they were good at imitating on their own anyway. So you go out and you hire a coach. What happens when you get to those accent training classes And this is what I think is really interesting, and this is something that I feel very strongly about. As I've been coaching all of these years, I've worked with a lot of students who are brand new to accent training, but I've also worked with a lot of students who have tried working with other coaches first. And I always ask about the types of strategies, the types of materials the other coaches use to get a better feel for what they've experienced so far and what worked or didn't work in their previous training. Now, for a lot of the people who come to me who had trouble learning in their previous program, those programs were very much focused on listening and repeating sounds and words. A lot of coaches fall back on this because there really isn't a lot of great information available about exact detailed placements for the vowels, for the consonants even sometimes, and for stress patterns. Now, for some people, this may be enough to have a coach simply listen to you, point out some of your problems, and have you copy after them. But what we've seen that's a lot more effective is to always, always, always pair listening and repeating, or this imitation approach, with other strategies. We find that students do a lot better, they make progress a lot more quickly, and they become independent in their skills and being able to produce the sounds accurately on their own without a coach when we use other strategies alongside imitation. We find that students do really well with a lot of very detailed, in-depth information about sound production and stress production and linking. The other aspect that's really important is detailed, in-depth information about spelling patterns and how stress affects pronunciation of vowels and other sounds in words. So again, getting in there, getting lots of detailed information about what you're doing, how you're doing it, and why you're doing it. Those are the kinds of things that are going to help you be consistent and accurate on your own without a coach. Ideally, there would be some kind of an endpoint to your accent training classes. We don't want you to come to class and rely on listening to a coach, repeating after the coach. What happens when you rely on imitation is that students don't feel confident outside of the classroom. They might feel more comfortable with certain words that they've produced over and over again in those training classes, but there's so many words in American English. There's so many different spelling patterns that you need to be aware of in order to really use those sounds that you've learned and use them consistently outside of class. So I know we keep harping on this, but this is one of the things that is most important in my mind is what students are able to do without you. And if you are teaching them really well, they should be able to have some level of independence without a coach giving them feedback. And in order to do this, you really need to dive in there, spend a lot of time on these other aspects aside from imitation. Now, we do use imitation. It is a very useful tool, but that is only one of the tools in our toolbox. We need to be using other things as well. So sometimes this can be frustrating for students who do feel that they are very good at imitating sounds, because we really try to pull that crutch away from them as we go through our classes. So sometimes a student may ask me, hey, can you please just say it for me so I can copy after you? And I'll say, no, you really need to use the strategies that you've learned to figure out how to get there on your own, because you are going to be without me outside of class and you'll need to figure out how to do this. So we give students the tools and the information they need to be able to get there on their own. We help support them as they learn so that they can use those tools and those strategies effectively. And then we feel really great about where they are when they leave our classes, knowing that they can continue to grow and improve on their own without us. So I hope this has helped you understand a little bit more about the pros and the cons of using imitation as a primary learning strategy for American English pronunciation. Best of luck, whatever you do with your pronunciation learning, and happy practicing. If you enjoyed this video and you feel that you learned something valuable about American English communication, make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you see all of our new content right as we publish it. I also invite you to comment below the video. Let me know what you liked, what confused you, what questions you have. This will help guide me as I create new content in the future to meet your needs. You can also visit us at Englishin.com, where we have tons of coursework for both people who are learning American English and coaches who are teaching American English to their students. You'll find information on both one-on-one training and self-study courses. Thank you so much for learning with us at Englishin, and happy practicing.